This month is women's
Yay!
dedicated. It's our month.
Yes, it's such a shame that it's like Black History Month. It's only actually the woman has only one day.
1 month exactly.
1 month, 1 day. Our audience, welcome to another episode, Heart to Heart, Sadia Ahmed, Marielle, and we started recording in the middle of we started having a conversation, and then we realized, oh, we're not recording. So let's go back. What were you saying, Marielle?
Yes. I think, I was talking about keeping a balanced dynamic. I think that was one of the things that I said. So in relationships and in friendships, if there's a fallout of some sort, or if there is a dynamic that isn't working for us, right? It is, yes, even though there are two people involved, right? It's just like being able to give ourselves the space to really determine, like, what is my responsibility, or what is my contribution to this imbalanced dynamic, and what do I need to change to create, to add my portion of the balance, right, of creating a balanced dynamic. And then really observing of is the other person also open and willing to taking responsibility for their portion of the imbalance that's being created in the dynamic? And truly, are they open and willing to saying, I need to change. There are some things that I need to change in how I'm showing up in the relationship. And I think it's a process that feels a bit challenging, right? And I think we've mentioned this in a couple of the episodes that we've recorded before, in a couple of the conversations, of feeling like breaking free from that, breaking free from people pleasing, breaking free from, the cool girl or the nice girl syndrome. And how that process is really such a commitment, like a moment to moment commitment, because essentially we're the ones. I love there's this technique, emotional freedom technique. It's called EFT. The short for it is EFT. So it's tapping in different parts of the bodies to release energy that isn't flowing. And one of the practitioners that I follow on YouTube, that his name is Brad Yates. I really like his videos, his EFT videos. He always says a statement in the beginning that I really, really like. He says, before he starts kind of like this session, he says, taking full responsibility for my own well-being, mind, body, heart, and spirit. And I really like that. I really like that statement, because it really reminds me of, it's really a reminder of, like, even though we're relating with other and exchanging energy with other people, if we don't look after our own well-being, and if we don't take responsibility for our own well-being, we cannot have an expectation that someone else is going to say, oh yeah, I'm going to be kind to you, or I'm going to respect your boundaries, even though you are breaking your own boundaries. Anyway, any thoughts?
Yes, actually, this is a good segue for today's episode and the topic that we are going to cover. I found this amazing quote from Toni Morrison, the late Toni Morrison, and it says, if you want to fly, you've got to give up that shit that weighs you down.
Love it.
So I think part of giving up the stuff that weighs you down is also acknowledging what you contribute.
Yes.
And taking, basically letting that weight off and realizing that you have the power to create your happiness.
Mm-hmm.
You have the power to create your well-being.
Mm-hmm.
You have the power to decide how you show up in relationships.
Yes.
And what you accept within relationships, whether it's intimate or friendship.
Yes.
So that's our responsibility. Often we think this person is treating me like this.
Mm-hmm.
True, that's a legitimate complaint, but it's your responsibility to not take that.
Yes.
It's your responsibility to not accept that.
Yes.
And it's your responsibility to create good energy around you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And I think, you know, and I know this month is women's
Yay!
dedicated. It's our month.
Yes, it's such a shame that it's like Black History Month. It's only actually the woman has only one day.
1 month exactly.
1 month, 1 day, and also African, yeah. Black History Month has one month, but yeah, that's a different topic. But
yeah, so I you know, I've recently been having conversations with friends, specifically around what are some expectations, and in what ways do you feel that we've been conditioned as women as it relates to our desires, like how we show up as women and what is expected of us as women. You know, is it something that is like just naturally within us, that it's a desire that we have, it's in the way that we feel like showing up, or is it, you know, is there external influence? And if so, like what has been the external influence? Because recently, I think like last week, I had quite a few, you know, I had like lunches and breakfasts and calls here and there, catching up with friends, you know, with female friends. And to one of them I said, I had this insight about, am I really driven and hardworking naturally? Or was this something that was implanted? Because I felt that somehow if I was those things, you know, and to say like, and kind of like my reflection was that, you know, was it really innately, or was it something that I learned and was conditioned to do as a woman, right? And specifically as a woman of color, of like, and as we were kind of going through the question together, because she said, you know, I've never really thought of that. She's also an entrepreneur. And there was this whole, you know, exploration of, I know for me, always feeling like, you know, as the daughter of immigrants, there's already, it's almost like an attachment to you have to earn your place here. You know, you have to demonstrate that that you are worthy of the opportunity of being in this country. And that's really passed on, even though I was born, you know, in the US. There's still kind of like that expectation. And we started kind of going through a list of the different areas where we felt like, am I really showing up in that way because that's who I am and what feels good and natural to me? Or is it me trying to prove something, to be viewed in a certain light? I don't know. What are your thoughts? What would you say?
For me, it's a pressure that comes from society. It's a learned habit. It's a pressure that comes from our experiences. I'm also I'm the first person to, actually I was the first person to go and live in the UK. So my siblings came to Europe before me, but I was the first person to go to United Kingdom. I have lived there for a very long time, and now I have an extended family in the UK. So as an immigrant, you leave behind a place. My case was because of war.
Yeah.
So whether you're economic immigrant or somebody who leaves their country of origin because of not feeling safe, still, wherever you go, you have to prove that you are earning your keep. And I think it's almost there's another thing that I don't know if it shows up in your family, that for us as immigrants also there's a lot of pressure of kind of showing what have you done, you know, that question of what have you done with your life.
Absolutely, 100%.
Because people send money back, people build houses, palaces. And so you have that notion that you not only have to provide and kind of create a life for you here, but you also have to create a life on the place where you left.
No, it's the same. It's the same. And back to that idea of like feeling like you have to, at least for me, I know, like feeling like you have to outwork the people that, you know, actually were born in that particular country. Because, you know, I remember always like the comments of like, we left everything, you know, to come to this country, and how that really impacted even really the sharing of our emotional states, like, as at least for me, you know, as a daughter of immigrants, how there's this kind of like unspoken thing, and sometimes very spoken, of for example, if I wanted to express like, oh, I'm feeling sad, or this thing, you know, I don't want to do this thing, this is what there was always like this how dare you, you know, like if I said, oh, I'm sad, like, oh, you have so much to be grateful for, you know, you've never had to, you know, you're not living in so and so in this place, and you're, you know, you have a home, you have a roof over your head, and there's always this all this like implanting of guilt for you simply saying I'm, which is totally and perfectly normal. I'm like, I'm just not having the best day ever, you know, I'm not having a good day, I'm feeling sad, or I'm feeling frustrated, or I'm feeling in such, you know, in a way, and how that really influenced so much of discomfort about really sharing authentically my emotional state, you know, and then going into relationships where, yeah, it was okay to share, but you're there, kind of like, no, I'm fine, all is well. I better not say anything, and that impacting kind of like that discomfort of really being authentic and saying, I'm not okay, I'm not feeling well, or I disagree with this, or no, I don't want to do X, Y, and Z. And there's always it's very interesting to see as it relates to your own personal needs and to your emotional needs, when you or your family has lived through the immigrant experience.
Yes, I mean, and for me, for example, I came to Europe 30 years ago. Actually, April would be 31st now, 31 years. So the first 18 years, I really didn't pause. I just didn't have the capacity. And it's not that I didn't have, actually, there was no space to actually feel anything or have an understanding about what I want or who I am, because I came and every day, every year you're basically just trying to kind of make it to those goals. Like, okay, do you have a roof over your head? Okay, do you have documents? Are you studying? Have you learned the language? Are you going to, after all of this, are you going to get a job? Are you going to get a decent job? A job that pays okay? Are you going to do 3 people's roles and get paid, one salary? And all of that takes time. And only, I think, in my mid-30s, towards my late 30s, really, that I actually had the chance to kind of pause. From mid-30, kind of like, okay, that's when I started to think, okay, who am I? How am I? What am I doing? How am I showing up? What do I want out of life? That, existential crisis that people often get into later nowadays with younger generations. They even get this earlier. But yeah, mine came like mid-30, where I was like, what's my next step? What's my direction? Who am I? And that's also when I started going through and kind of taking almost like a sift through my upbringing, my culture. What do I want to keep? What do I want to leave behind? Am I able to feel bad? Can I dream big? All of these things came into play, and that's when I started going to therapy. That's when I realized also that working hard it's not equal to getting everything you want or getting a lot of money.
Yes, absolutely. That's a big one.
That's when I realized that I was like, everybody seems to be like ticking these lists, and I am also ticking, but how come I'm not? It's not, my bank balance doesn't reflect, and I'm always working.
Yeah.
And then you realize, so actually working 16 hours or 14 hours a day doesn't, it's not equal. It doesn't mean that your bank balance is going to overflow. So I had to take a stock and kind of recalibrate and understand that I need to create a balance. And, understand that I needed to, I need to create a balance where I am able to, where I make the decisions about my life and how I live my life.
And would you say, do you feel like you've had, a point of reference in terms of, you know, when you speak about moving and working hard? Did you feel like you've had a point of reference from like a female figure, whether that's, you know, directly or indirectly in your life, that's been like, okay, you know, this is what I hope to have some of these characteristics that this, you know, person has?
My actually, this is in honor of International Women's Day. My auntie Mako, my late auntie Mako, I was pregnant with my eldest son when she passed away. She was 92 years old.
Mhm.
And at some part when I moved from my Italian dad and my aunt, when I moved from their home and came to live with my family, if you're watching this and you think, oh, who are these people? There's another episode that we spoke about this, and you can go and check. So when I moved to my family, moved and started living with my biological siblings, family, my auntie was there as a mom, because since we lost our mom, she was basically the person who was at home cooking and taking care of the family, because my older siblings were older and they were already in school, so they just, you know, needed an adult to be at home to take care of them. So this is who she was. And now when I look back, I'm almost close to 50, and I think for me, apart from the songs that I grew up with, that kind of made me realize, there's more to me being just a second-class citizen. She was the person that kind of knew me. She saw it through me, and I remember at home, my auntie never wanted to share and say her age. So, so her siblings would come, like my uncles, would come home. Like let's say there was a visit and everybody's there in the family. We had meals and everybody's joking, and they'll be like, Mako, so how old are you? And she refused. I remember growing up always hearing her going, mind your own business. That's number one. Number two, my aunt, back home, if you smoked, at least when I was growing up, if you smoked as a woman, you kind of always had to hide, you know, go behind the door, you know, behind the house, a little corner, a friend's shed, somewhere where people kind of, women who smoked went. Nowadays, women smoke, chew chat. We chew a plant that's a stimulant. But back in the 80s, when I was growing up, she basically was, she didn't chew tobacco, but she put tobacco on her, you know, here on her cheek. Yeah. I don't know if in
no, I know
extended family, so she didn't like any of us going to buy for her. She always hid from us.
Yes.
And we would see her in the tobacco shop. Sometimes we know that she gets dressed, gets ready, goes for a walk. We know what that walk is about, but no one is, you know, is allowed to ask her, where are you going? She'll just tell you to F off. And when you come from a culture really where there's so much pressure on women and
Mhm.
not on women being free, on women doing things out in the open.
Yeah.
For her to be able to go there, buy her tobacco, bring it home, use it, we can see it's sticking out on her cheek, from
Yeah,
on
the little
yeah, and being able to, when somebody says, mind your business, it was for me. Now when I look back, I'm like, wow, that's amazing. And all the things that about her age, like she basically refused any type of comments or questions that kind of questioned her and her needs and her wants. So she was like, I'm not having it.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Get lost.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so for me, when I look back now, I'm like, oh my God, I what a wonderful auntie, and what a wonderful inspiration, and what a wonderful woman, because she lived in early, she was a very young woman in the beginning of last century, and to grow up and to see the country changing from colonized country to independent, to her getting married and kind of her marriage is not working, not having children. It's there's a lot of stigma and a lot of things that come, but she always refused to take on board any of these stigmas.
Wow. Wow. That's so significant, right? So significant to be able to regardless, right, of like society and culturally what the expectation is, to be able to say, hey, wait a minute, these are the choices that I would like to make for myself. And sometimes, people think that it's in huge, that many times they have to be huge choices and they have to be, like super political choices, and not necessarily, right? Always, like it can be in how I choose to show up in my everyday life, in the choices that I make, that feel like they honor the person that I want to be. So it's quite interesting because I find, so much of, I mean, I know that, for me, I have such mixed feelings about modern day feminism, and that movement, because the sense there for me is that it's like completely anti-men.
I think it's portrayed in the West. I think it's kind of portrayed because people want to stigmatize and shame women. But I think really the spirit of feminism is about just having rights and being able to affirm those rights and demand those rights.
Yes.
That's all.
Well, and I think, and this is, why I'm saying modern day, because I feel like there's so much I think it's there are a lot of aspects of it that are not necessary, that are confusing, in the sense, like, at least for me, how I view it is that you can be independent. You can use your voice as a woman. You can be strong and outspoken and live on your terms. You can do all of those things without having to make men the enemy or the bad guy or the thing that I want to take down, and then that I'm going to not welcome into my experience. Because I think that piece of that radical stance, of oh man, you know, are the the downfall of society. I mean, right? It's that's for me where I can see how that many times is a disservice to women, than more of a disservice than a benefit, right? Because I feel like um when we think about communities, when we think about building, when we think about family, um I think that when harmonized correctly, you know, when there is a balance, the role that each person plays, you know, whether it's, you know, whether male or female, um, is such a contribution, right? And I think that the gift of it is that, yes, we do have very different perspectives and very different things that we, by virtue of our differences, um, that we contribute.
You need somebody to value that, though, because I think that's where I believe that feminism, there's a huge need, and there was a huge need for feminism and for women to have a voice and to create a space where their voice were heard, because if we are not valued, if your needs and your contributions are diminished,
Yeah.
then it's natural, it's normal that you're going to create a counter narrative that will combat that. Feminism, I think, it's essential and it's important, especially in a lot of different parts of the world.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that I hold responsible for men, because this is something that I experience, is war. Like, really, tell me how many wars a woman started in the last 400 years. No, seriously, it's tell me how many women fought for power in the last 400 years. None. And I think until really, because I come from a background where really we have suffered a lot with a civil war, a war that ousted a dictator, which was legitimate to oust the war to oust the dictator was legitimate. But then afterwards, it kind of really went into a completely different direction and destroyed a whole, couple of generations, and we're still recovering from that. And that had to do with men not being able to share power. After the vacuum left by the dictator fleeing, they just started kind of really going and having this internal conflict where no group wanted to leave the other group, wanted to basically the other group to lead. And so it was 25 years of that. And it's not now when I hear, yes, modern feminism is not perfect. Nowadays, I also hear, I see these posts on social media, women saying child-free woman, look at what child-free woman can do. To me, I'm like, it really saddens me to see something like that. I'm like, why do you have to? Yes, you are a child-free woman by choice. I respect that. Actually, kudos to you, because it's hard work to have children. And I respect your time, but it's not that it has to be because it's not that you don't bring value or you are not valued just because you're not having children. The same way that I don't think that I'm any valued better or I'm better person or human being because I have brought children to the world.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is where modern dialogue and discussions about feminism gets lost, because now we're at the stage where it's not only that the man, some aspects of man are blamed on you know, as a kind of a fringe of feminism dislikes men and kind of hold responsible for everything. But then now within the women, now there's this also two groups, the childless, child-free, and a woman with child, and they're each like kind of competing. It's me growing up, I needed feminism to feel that hey, to have a space where I could discuss and bring my views to the table and advocate and articulate my needs. On the flip side, now groups of women are also kind of having this tit for tat discussion about child-free and child. It's yeah, it does confuse me. I'm not saying that it's not there, it's there, but it does confuse me, and I feel that as women, I don't think that we have achieved a lot.
Yeah, well, I think with the situation of like forming all these subgroups where there is, like, this is the stance to take, or this is, the superior stance to your stance, and specifically, what you're saying about the becoming a mother, being the motherhood aspect or childbearing. It's again, it's one of those situations that it's just like, what is the root of the desire? Like, I think that's what I like to look at, like, what is the root of the desire when it comes to, yes, wanting to be childless? Like, if that's someone's choice, is it you trying to make, some sort of political statement? Is it you truly looking after your well-being and saying, hey, I don't think I'm cut out for this, or I don't have the desire to to pretend like I want to do this. And I think that all of those stances are valid. But I think there's also that misconception of like, if women are making that choice, if there's a group of women that are making the choice to stay childless, that they must be anti-children, or they don't like children, or which is not necessarily the case, right?
No, it's true. It's not.
But then there's a piece of, and I think that's where things get tricky, the piece of saying, of assuming, right? Assuming I'm making this choice to be childless, and I have all this time, and I have resources, and I have my freedom, and I keep my body, and I and my life is not dictated, at the mercy of children. Okay, great and good for you if that's what you desire, and that's what feels good and true to you. But then there's the piece of saying, oh, but mothers are miserable, and they give up their entire life, and they compromise.
There's some truth to that.
They compromise and stay in relationships because they have children. I mean, I think that's a very broad generalization, because absolutely motherhood is, the hardest job on earth that there is. And there are, you know, I know from witnessing my mother, you know, and everyone in my family that's a mother and friends and all of that, that of course there are, yes, 100%, there are absolutely challenging moments. And periods, like not even moments, sometimes they are extended years even.
Yes.
But but saying that the root of someone's unhappiness was their choice to become a mother, I can't get behind that.
Me too, and the vice versa, and the other side too. The root of, you know, or someone judging a person who makes the choice to not have children because they feel that they're not cut for that. I 100% respect that. In fact, we should have more and more of that, because I think then society probably will end up with less children who are in situations where they are not wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I'm saying? Situations where, I mean, God forbid, things can happen, and you can lose a parent, you can end up in the system for one reason or another. But a lot of times, sometimes kids end up in the system or are being looked after or are fostered because parents are not able to. And so if that parent really was given I rather give that parent a choice not to have a child. And I think it's fantastic, because that means we're causing less pain and less hurt to human beings.
Yeah.
Since it's International Women's Day this month, what would you like to see for women in this century now?
I think
actually decade, sorry.
More women giving themselves, women having the conditions that support them being able to experience more ease, and for them to be able to engage more in play and things that are not so taxing all the time on their nervous system, on their bodies, on their mind. Just, you know, I think that I would want to see more of that, because I think that women, there's so many pressures and expectations on women that it's just like life can become very serious, you know, and it can become very like all about, you know, being on a schedule all the time or these different things. And I think that it's just like, where is the time and space, and what conditions are necessary to support being able to have that time and space to experience that ease. So I think that I would like to see more of that, and specifically, you know, for groups and communities where the idea of rest or the idea of ease is, oh no, that's, you know, for a select few, or that's, you know, that's a privilege for a select few that, you know, have a specific type of socioeconomic arrangement. You know, I think that I would like to see more initiatives that truly support not only like, oh, become an entrepreneur, or, you know, go and get a PhD, and because all of that is work. It's like, can we create programs for women to, like, you know what, go on a retreat, you know, for 10 days and we'll fund it. Go and, you know, meet some friends. And I think that's something that I would really like to see a change in for women specifically.
For me, I would like women to, and I think this also goes for me, to feel that we are enough, that whatever we choose, whether we want to be child-free or with children, you are enough. And what you're bringing to the table, what you're contributing to society is valuable, and we need you. And so always remember that you are enough, that you do not need to prove, and stand up for your right, meaning create the conditions where you can express your voice and surround yourself with people who are able to listen to you, to hear you. And if you're not in that environment, start making the change that will let you to be in an environment where you are valued and you are enough.
Love it. Yeah.
Till next time. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Happy International Women's Day. Ciao.